What's up, you guys? Welcome to another episode of The Variety Views. I'm your host, The Variety Vendor, and I'm here with a new series. It's pretty much rebooking the worst pay-per-views of each year. Let's start off with 2020, which is apparently the worst year in wrestling. There have been good stuff that happened in that year, but at the same time, as far as the entire world goes, yeah, I would tend to agree. It was one of the worst years ever. Definitely the worst year that I ever had to live through. So, going through Sportster's top, I guess the top 14 or however pay-per-views were out there that year. The worst pay-per-view that they picked was Super Showdown, which was in Saudi Arabia, and I can't really go with that. You know, it's hard to really book for a house show. If you're gonna go with a pay-per-view, I would rather go with something that is widely available as a pay-per-view rather than something streaming or anything like that. And I know, like, most pay-per-views nowadays is like streaming, but you can still, pay per view. So instead of going with Super Showdown, I'm going to go with Money in the Bank, which was the second worst pay-per-view of that year as far as Sportster goes. Just a little idea that I wanted to go with. So I wouldn't agree that Money in the Bank was really the worst, but I'll go with what they went out and said. Pretty much what they said, Money in the Bank was certainly an interesting event with a mix of in-ring action and cinematic style work in the unique main event. Having the ladder matches happen at WWE HQ was certainly different and memorable, but they weren't the strongest of matches. Some of the other bouts on the night were fairly forgettable, though, with only Drew McIntyre facing Seth Rollins being something that felt truly pay-per-view worthy. Now it was a B pay-per-view, and plus they were trying something new, so I can't fault them for that. I can never fault anybody. I can't fault anybody for trying something different. All I'm asking for is effort. Whether it's a bad show or a good show, all I'm asking for is effort. So let's look at the card. There was a pre-show with Jeff Hardy versus Cesaro. Jeff Hardy going over, and then you had the New Day, Big E, and Kofi Kingston defeating the Forgotten Sons. Oh boy, were they forgotten. Steve Cutler and Wesley Blake with Jackson Riker, and John Morrison and The Miz, and the Lucha House Party, Grand Metalik, and Lince Dorado. Four-way for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. I remember that was a fun match. That was a fun match, and it's one of those things where the more people that you have, the more you kind of forget that they're wrestling in an empty arena. Or an empty building, I should say. I can't call it an arena. And I always enjoyed those multi-man matches. So, whenever they have a lot of people in the ring, it kind of masks the silence. So I always liked that. Then you had Bobby Lashley versus R-Truth. Yeah, I remember when R-Truth, called out, I think he called out Lashley and then wanted to fight him or something, or accidentally, it got into a match, or I don't know, something happened there. But I do remember that being pretty bad. Bayley defeating Tamina. I remember the build to it was good. It was actually pretty good. I remember the build to it, but the match itself was meh. Braun Strowman and The Fiend, or actually it was Bray Wyatt, it wasn't The Fiend, and him beating Bray Wyatt, I thought it was a good match. And I thought it was the right call, the right finish. Braun Strowman just won the Universal title, so it made sense. Then there was this head scratcher. I remember this was a head scratcher of the match, but my God, the build was great, and the match really delivered. Drew McIntyre against Seth Rollins for the WWE Championship, and it was a banger of a match. But the build, it just came out of nowhere. I remember Seth Rollins was just named the number one contender, and I was like, what? The dude lost. He lost at WrestleMania, and he never wrestled a match on Raw leading up to this. Or maybe he did, but, I don't remember him winning like a number one contenders match. He was just like named the number one contender, and he faced Drew McIntyre for the WWE title. And I gotta say, there were moments where I thought that Rollins might win this, but, they did the right call. Drew just won the title at Mania, and he was in a hot streak, so of course you had to keep the title on Drew. But yeah, like I was very surprised that Seth Rollins got the title shot. I think it was supposed to be given for Kevin Owens, but Kevin Owens was hurt. But still, you could have done a number one contenders match on Raw. Maybe Seth Rollins was, working through nagging injuries. You could have had somebody else then. Somebody that actually won, a match leading up to Money in the Bank. Or a match at WrestleMania. I'll get to it. And then you had the coinciding Money in the Bank ladder matches with the women and the men going at the same time. It was okay. I remember it being okay. Like, I remember it being like a fine, cinematic match. There was some fun stuff going on in that match. It was okay. It's nothing that I will, watch every time maybe like, I don't know why, but maybe there'd be a day that I'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna marathon all the Money in the Bank ladder, the Money in the Bank pay-per-views. This is not gonna be one of those pay-per-views that I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, definitely. It was whatever show, it was good as far as 2020 standards. They were still like trying to find their their footing. So it was okay in that aspect, but yeah. So here's how I would do it differently. So I would cut down a lot of matches, because I remember when the pay-per-view ended, it was like just a little bit over 2 hours. And I was surprised. I was like, wow, they're really ending this now. I expected more to happen, or maybe they would add another match. But no, when they got into the main event, there was I think 25 minutes left, or like 30 minutes left. And the show ended, and it was like a little over 2 hours, and it was freaking great. So with that, if that's the case, if you're going to go with 2 hours, then cut the matches down. You don't need 8 matches, or 8 matches including the pre-show. So what I would have done is start off the show with the SmackDown tag titles on the line. Do the same thing. Fine. Do the same thing that they did. Because I like the multi-man match. I like the multi-man aspect of it. That's great. The more the merrier. Then you go to the women's Money in the Bank. Tamina, Sasha Banks, Asuka, Nia Jax, Lacey Evans, and Shayna Baszler. I think this, it writes itself. You do a multi-woman match. There's a lot of spots going on, so it masked the silence. The fact that there are no fans. So yeah, I think it would be a fun match. And hey, if you want to use the WWE headquarters, then just do it. Just start the match on WWE headquarters, on the roof of WWE headquarters, rather than build up to it and start from the bottom floor and then go to the way up. If you're not gonna utilize it to its full potential, then just start off at the roof. And if you're gonna do other crazy stuff, then save it for the main event. I think this way you give people a taste of things to come, and you save the big stuff for later, where you have enough people to kind of focus on, rather than 15 people, 20 people, and just you go from point A to point B to point C, and it's just because the sense of geography was all over the place in that cinematic match. So you do that with the women's Money in the Bank, and of course you have Asuka go over. Then the next night you do the same thing that they pretty much did, because Becky was pregnant. Well, you can't change that. After that, I would have done the Universal title on the line. Wouldn't have Bray Wyatt, as in a match. I would have Braun Strowman defend the Universal Championship and go over against Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro. because I think that the problem with Braun Strowman's title reign was the lack of good matches, and I think that Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro would elevate Braun Strowman's title reign, and I really think that they would have like good chemistry. And Shinsuke Nakamura is always great with bigger guys, and Cesaro is a freak of nature. So I'm pretty sure that they can do a lot of great stuff. And plus, Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura are part of the Artist Collective, and maybe build up some tension between them for a bit. Maybe plant some seeds for things to come. And I'd have Strowman go over, and then after the match, maybe you do something with Bray Wyatt. Maybe you do something with Bray Wyatt, showing up on the Titantron and being like, yeah, I want my title, to build up for the next pay-per-view, rather than, right away go with Bray Wyatt versus Braun. Save it. Bray just had a big deal, at WrestleMania. He just had like a crazy thing go on with John Cena. You can't just have him come back right away, the first SmackDown that you get a chance with. So, save that. Save that. Have the thing to happen at the end after this match, and so that you can have a hook for SmackDown, so that people would want to watch what happens on SmackDown. It's like, oh shit, Bray Wyatt came back. So after that, we got the only singles match in the entire show, and that is for the WWE Championship. Drew McIntyre versus, not Seth Rollins, Aleister Black. Because Aleister Black won a match against Lashley at WrestleMania. Remember that? Remember that match? Yeah, me neither. But Aleister Black beat Lashley in that at WrestleMania. So, he's been racking up wins. He's been pseudo undefeated on the main roster up until this point. So why not? Give him a title shot. Have him face Drew McIntyre. Drew beats him. Aleister Black is elevated. And, Drew having a great match with a guy like Aleister Black, who I'm very sure would give him a great match, would add a little bit of fire into the championship reign that Drew McIntyre would hold. So, yeah, I think, a simple babyface versus babyface match, and Drew McIntyre going over, and at the end they shake hands, earn each other's respect, and then Aleister Black would work his way back up from then on, while, gaining an ally in Drew McIntyre. So I think it's perfect booking, actually, when it comes to that. So then we go to the main event. The main event, you get all your big names, or the big names that you had at the time. Jeff Hardy had a pre-show match at Money in the Bank, at a show where you have a ladder match as your main event. He had a singles match with Cesaro in the pre-show. Nothing against Cesaro, but that's not where you put Jeff Hardy. You put Jeff Hardy in the Money in the Bank ladder match. Jeff Hardy should have been in the Money in the Bank ladder match, and that's where I would put him against AJ Styles, who just came off of a loss against The Undertaker at Mania, Daniel Bryan, Seth Rollins, Rey Mysterio, and Bobby Lashley. All these guys that have either lost at Mania or weren't even at Mania. So, this is kind of like their redemption. And the way that I would have done this would be let them qualify, have matches on Raw, and pretty much qualify. Maybe you do like a 2-on-2, 3-on-3, or something like that, just so that you can build up the competitors and put them on this main event. And I wouldn't have Otis be a part of this. If anything, I would actually have him be on the pre-show panel with Mandy Rose. Maybe like showing them like on the beach, or beaches weren't open back then. Maybe at a hotel resort or something, and then you show them just chilling, or they're they're on a vacation or something like that. Otis didn't need to be, a part of this card. You could have saved him for later on when you have a feud ready for him. So, yeah, that would be it. And as for the Money in the Bank winner, Seth Rollins. You have Seth Rollins win the Money in the Bank, and then later on you could do Drew and Seth. It's that simple. And I think Seth was so good in 2020, especially in the lead up to his match with Drew McIntyre. He was cutting the best promos I remember him ever cutting. And you saw that fire. There were times, like Drew McIntyre is a great promo, and there were times where Seth Rollins was even better than Drew. Where I was like, you know what? If you put the title on Seth, I have no problem with that. So Seth, and even like building up his faction, I know the Authors of Pain was let go that year, but you could have had other people, a part of that. You could have had maybe Aleister Black and Murphy as part of the greater good, and build up Seth Rollins' rep until he's like, okay, I'm going to cash in the Money in the Bank on Drew McIntyre, and then insert himself into that feud that Drew was having with Randy Orton. So I really think there could have been many ways that you could have worked Seth Rollins out in the main event. And I think you would start with putting the Money in the Bank briefcase on him rather than Otis, who they completely forgot about, a couple of months later. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I got for you right now. And with that being said, like, comment, and subscribe. Ding that bell icon to be notified on future episodes on the Variety Vendor channel. And yeah, check out my next video. We talk about something else. Take care.